guys, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on today's episode of Calling All Titans, I want to talk about the superhero Titan. Before I get to today's video, be sure to check out the end of this video for an update on Custom Faction Month. This is a really difficult video for me to make, because if you've watched the channel a long time, you know that I am both a big fan of the superhero theme and the superhero faction. They have consistently been in my top 5 favorite factions, and not that being a favorite leads to results, but my results with them have been good, including multiple multiplayer tournament victories. So for them to get a Titan, when so many players I know love them, is a little jarring for me, even more so than mad scientists, so I have to step back and be as objective as possible to consider how Titanflation may have affected this faction and whether or not they need one after all. Consider this: It's Your Fault went from having no Titans the first time to 3. What many considered to be the best expansion suddenly requires a revamp. Because the inclusion of one is the exclusion of all others, this means that we gave superheroes a Titan despite them having a clear game plan, but we didn't give one to teddy bears who don't. What I've learned during this unveiling process is that superheroes is actually a pretty divisive faction, polarizing on both ends of the extremes. A lot of players focus on the vulnerability of mild-mannered citizens, yet I can't help but point out that destruction is objectively bad, and all destruction factions got a Titan or a card that says Titan on them. I've always felt that superheroes had the tools to win the war of attrition, but clearly others disagreed. I think part of the problem is that Titans seem to be the only solution considered, and Titans can't solve everything. This is a point I often think about myself but rarely have a chance to bring up. Suppose for a moment Big in Japan never came out, and thus Titans never existed. How then would Smash Up adjust the balance? Either they wouldn't, or they'd have no choice but to adjust cards, and I feel like superheroes are a few tweaks away from being more consistent in a way that would really appeal to others. We'll try and go over some of those tweaks as we discuss our 3 main questions. Where did they go wrong? Assuming they did. What do they need? And what does this Titan give them? As I said before, a lot of emphasis is put on their vulnerability. As this didn't seem to be a problem beforehand, I want to focus on what changed since the new Titans, and destruction has largely taken a back seat. Ancient Egyptians can destroy them twice, but it is slow, and the mild-mannered citizen should generally be able to avoid it. Cowboys have a lot of destruction, and could possibly win with a gunfighter using a bluff, so that's a legitimate threat. Samurai only have Phase 3 destruction. That's it for all of Oops. Luchadors can pin the citizens, which is certainly effective, and they have Out for the Count, but both of those cost multiple cards. Still, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. The rest of the International Incident expansion has no destruction, unless you count Always Get Our Man, and I don't, as I rarely use that card, and it's 1 card. Moving on to Culture Shock, the Russian fairy tales have non-traditional removal, but not in a way that I really fear for the mild-mannered citizens. Big Bad Wolf can destroy a minion, and that's it for the rest of Culture Shock. When you look at Marvel, it's mostly an action here or there, and certainly not renewable. As I can't tell exactly when the Titans were conceived in relation to Disney, I don't think that superheroes are particularly hurt by Disney either. Most of their vulnerability comes from factions that already got or were getting Titans themselves, and it feels like an invented problem, much like Titanflation. But I'm actually going to play devil's advocate and talk about the opposite of what I normally do. While I always want strong internal synergy and focus, I don't want it at the expense of external synergy, and I think superheroes lean too hard into the specifics of what they want. Ironically, they have the solution internally, but it's always complained about. Secret base protecting 3 or less when they have no 3s. This isn't the problem. The problem is that it's an outlier. Imagine if all the baselines were redrawn and superheroes were above their own baseline. Like a mild-mannered citizen could grab a 4, not just a 5. It still needed a turn, and it still destroyed itself, but it gave more flexibility to focus on upper-tier minions, not just the top tier. Sidekick is another example. You can only play a 5 on a base with a 2, which is a super niche edge case that only works externally and terminally, and its togetherness power in an extremely nerfed form. We've seen togetherness power variants, strictly having less power variants, and Sidekick is just bad by comparison. Awesome Guy doesn't understand how power creep works, because if you have other minions to protect, you are likely winning there and should focus on offense instead. Expanded power doesn't have a use case in the faction because it's power creep to a 5 or a temporary defensive card for a citizen. Justice Friend doesn't do much for 90% of your partner faction. They need to have a full rebuilding turn for a citizen in Golden Age, which could immediately be wiped out with a single play. It's starting to sound like I don't like superheroes, yet I clearly do. Is it that they are a risk-reward faction and the risk is too high? I think the actual problem is that the reward is no longer special, and it doesn't make sense for the risk. Searching is one of their best mechanics. Their value proposition was that you could get instant access to your leaders. But does that carry the same weight in the age of TDAC and constant surging and Strength Plus factions? I think that is the real problem. They're not as relevant anymore. So how does Everything Glove approach this? By missing the point entirely. One of the hardest parts about Titans is getting the entry criteria correct, and this entry is a bit of a paradox, not to be confused with the actual paradox, the DC villain who could have been the theme for this Titan. I've heard some playtesters say it's too easy to bring out. I've heard some say it's too hard to bring out. I think both are wrong, as crazy as that sounds. The entry criteria is that after one of your minions is destroyed, you may play the glove on its base. In the Age of Titans, it's quite possible for a rival to destroy your citizen, have you play the glove there, then immediately play their Titan to clash the glove and knock it back out. It means that it's really hard to play the citizen on a base with the Titan, the base you should be attacking. If you play a citizen and lose it, you can play the glove there, but the damage is already done. That loss of turn might put you further out on the base, making it no longer be the base you can win, and the citizen isn't really sped up because you still need to play another and wait another turn. You do gain protection, but the time when you needed it already passed, given the level of destruction most factions have. But what if you destroy your own citizen at the start of the turn? Then you could bring out the glove, at which point you are likely playing 2 5s and have less of a need for protection. Also, you are likely winning there, so you are unlikely to play another citizen and leave out all that power for another turn, especially when the citizens are bad terminally. For the superheroes themselves, I have found in both cases that by the time the glove actually comes out, the need isn't there anymore, and you really aren't in control of its destiny. And then there is the TDAC. I thought that it was pretty well established that searching factions don't like card draw, lest they draw the cards they want to play from the deck. But apparently I'm wrong, because I keep seeing it. Drawing all your 5s is the worst for superheroes, as it makes the citizens dead, and this happened to me a lot when I get tempted to use the TDAC. You may think that you can play those 5s normally, but it really hurts your ability to get the right minions in play, and hurts the multiple mild-mounted citizen plays. It's not a good fit. I don't know why they have it, but it's there. Does the glove protect citizens? Yes, on rare occasions. Not as often as you think, though. The biggest boost it has given has been the terminal 2-power play from your partner, like a Mimic for 5 or a Howler for 4. It turns superheroes into even more of a support faction than they were before. So if these abilities are wrong, then what's the right answer? I honestly don't know. I have plenty of ideas and I've shared some of them before, but it ultimately doesn't matter because this is what we have. I almost wish I knew what problem this Titan is trying to solve, and to have an explanation as to how these abilities map to those problems. What's really interesting about the Titan is some of the best, most famous superhero pairings don't have 2s, and this would hold true for future factions in the same mold. The more higher power minions you have, the less 2s you will have. I'm not sure how I feel about this, but I did want to point it out. In my experience with the glove, I've largely focused on existing combos who got stronger, like werewolves and shapeshifters or killer plants, or focusing on self-sacrificing minions to bring out the Titan on my own terms. You saw it with Superhero Hydra, which makes it super easy to bring out the glove. You get the ease of opportunity and a terminal Zola too. One of the issues with the glove is that it doesn't really tell me to do anything differently. In the best possible case, I'm doing what I've already been doing all along and playing an extra 2 as a result. Theoretically, the defense lets them do what it intended to do better, but I already explained how that hasn't played out that way for me, and I know I'm not alone in my experiences. Other than that, I'm really not sure what else to say, since I can't say a whole lot about a defensive ability, TDAC, and an extra minion play that I don't use internally. I haven't been able to bring myself to play this Titan with Superhero Rockstars, my all-time favorite combination, but it is clearly going to make them better. Rather than beat you to death with my opinion, I'll let you form your own. The good news is, there are 2 Titans remaining, and I tend to like them both. What do you think of the Everything Glove? And if you had alternate ideas, what are they? Let me know in the comments. Just a quick note about Custom Faction Month. There's a little over a week left to submit your ideas, but I needed to make the rules easier unexpectedly. I wasn't aware that free software is unable to support the resolutions I am used to, so I'm relaxing that constraint. Just do the best you can, and make sure to check out the summary pages for more updates. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.